Hello and welcome into another edition of 8Sports Nightcap here on WRICNow.com, on our Facebook, on our YouTube page. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you have not tuned in to Nightcap before, it's just a weekly recap show of what happened this past weekend and kind of preview of what's going to take place later on this weekend in the sports world. We just talk a little ball. I am joined today by my producer, Will Gonzalez. Welcome in once more. We'll bring him in later in the show to kind of talk some of the other big storylines that took place this weekend and will be taking place this week. So big shout out to Will for helping out today. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me again, Nolan.
There you go. Happy to have you. So let's go ahead and jump into all the fun that took place this past week. I think we got to start with, we'll go in chronological order, but also the biggest story probably of the week here in Virginia. The Virginia Tech Hokies look dominant over Boston College. They take down the Eagles 42-21. Typo on your screen there. Virginia Tech wins that one 42-21. Drones played great in this game, 14 for 18. One of his incompletions was a drop as well, which would have been another 20 yards for him. Looked really good through one really bad interception in that third quarter. But the big storyline, of course, Bashul Tutin, 18 carries, 266 yards, of Virginia Tech rushing record, 3 touchdowns. He beats Darren Evans' record that he set against Maryland way back in the day. Not that too far, mid-2000s. On what was also a Thursday night game, so something about Virginia Tech running backs on Thursday night seemed to prove to be pretty good. Drones rushed for 2 touchdowns as well. Benji Gosnell led the way receiving with 4 receptions, 49 yards. And then Antoine Powell-Ryland Jr., man, this guy is unbelievable. 4 sacks on the night. Sets of Virginia Tech records. It breaks a Bruce Smith record that he had tied on now 3 or more sack games. He has more than anyone else in Virginia Tech history. On the season, he has 11 sacks, which leads the nation. We're only halfway through the year. There's about 5 games left, right, for Virginia Tech, 6 if you count a bowl game. And Antoine Powell-Ryland has already surpassed his sack total from last year when he was a breakout star player for Virginia Tech. So what he's been able to do this year has been nuts. And the fact that he's not on every single draft board in the top 32 picks, I don't understand how that's going on. In terms of this Saturday, the Hokies will host Georgia Tech. They lead that series 11 games to 8 losses, and a series that only dates back to 1990. You think of Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech; these are 2 programs that have been around, since forever, right? Georgia Tech football, Virginia Tech football. They've only played 19 times, and really they've played every year since 2004 or so. But it's kind of crazy to me that the series is so soon, considering how close the 2 universities are. Anyway, we got some footage from the Hokies matchup against Boston College this past weekend. Let's check it out. This footage, thanks in part to our friends over at WFXR. Hokies take the field. Great atmosphere at Virginia Tech, as always. It was an orange effect. Check out the orange uniforms, top and bottom. We don't see that very often. I thought it was a clean look from Virginia Tech. The script Hokies on the side of the helmets, new this year as well. They've never had those before. And to kind of take you through, that was a big Kyron Drones touchdown to get things going. The Hokies force a turnover, big recovery, and that led to another great drive by Virginia Tech in the first quarter. Another drone sneak that made it 14-0 at the time. And then once again, Boston College, they drove down the field. They played relatively okay. If a couple of things went different for Boston College, I think this could have been a different game. You can see there another fumble. It's who else but Antoine Powell-Ryland that jumped on top of it. And that would lead to a couple of more scores from the Hokies. Of course, this was probably the play of the night by Bashul Tutin. He's coming up here, took it like 70 yards to the house, jogged his way in from like the 20-yard line. An incredible play, an incredible night from Bashul Tutin. I mean, this guy's been unreal. He was a transfer in from North Carolina, A&T, I believe it was, where he was an okay player. And then now for Virginia Tech, he's just been unbelievable. He's averaging over 14 yards a carry in this past game. There he is on a receiving end of a touchdown pass from Drones, as the Hokies, man, they looked dominant at home against Boston College. We kind of talked about it last week with that win over Stanford on the road, that the Hokies have kind of looked like what they're supposed to look like now, right? This offseason, there was so much hype, Heisman talk about Kyron Drones, and then those first couple of weeks of the season, they played those close games. They lost to Rutgers. They lost to Vanderbilt, 2 games that, they probably should have won. They lost to Vandy in overtime, and it was like, after those losses, I think some of the pressure got off of the shoulders of some of these players that they had heard from the media, and they had heard from, their social media and everything. And, they've kind of just been able to play their style of football. I mean, a few weeks ago, I would have told you that Tyler Bowen, the offensive coordinator, probably should start looking for a job the way fans were talking about the way he's been calling games. And then you show up on Thursday night, the game plan works, you win 42-21, and it's all hunky-dory. Everybody's happy. So it's kind of an interesting situation that the Hokies find themselves in. The ACC standings are packed at the top. Let's see if I can pull them up here for you, and we'll take a gander to see if the Hokies have a shot at maybe, being in the conversation at the end of the year for a conference championship. They have a shot, but they're going to need some help. As you can see here, they sit at 2-1 of the conference. Clemson's 5-0, Miami's 3-0, SMU's undefeated, Pittsburgh's undefeated, and then you got Syracuse and Duke, who both have 1 loss. The Hokies play both of them. So if you win those games, now you find yourself in a situation where November 10th rolls around, and it's Miami, SMU, Clemson, and Pittsburgh up here. If the Hokies beat Clemson, they're right back in the picture for this conversation of an ACC championship. Of course, for that to happen, they would need SMU to probably lose a game. They have to play Pittsburgh. So one of these 2 teams between Pittsburgh and SMU, they're going to be in a really good position to maybe compete for an ACC championship. Pittsburgh, I think, has to play Clemson. So there's a lot of football left to be played. The season is not over by any means for Virginia Tech fans. If you had that goal of an ACC championship, I don't think it's ridiculous at all to say that Virginia Tech is still alive in that conversation. They're going to need some help with SMU playing so well, and of course they're going to have to win out. 5 games left, a lot of football left, and it feels at this point almost, normally before the college football expansion, we would be sitting here talking, 2 losses, it's over. The season's over for this team. But now with the expansion of the playoffs, we're late in the year, and it feels like there's so much more football left, and it's an interesting how you kind of watch football now differently with the college football playoff compared to how we did last year, even with the 4-team playoff, or definitely 10 days to 11 years ago before the 4-team. So pretty interesting stuff. The Hokies look good against Boston College, and this is what head coach Brent Pry had to say today at media availability, talking about the game against Boston College, and then, of course, their matchup this Saturday for homecoming against Georgia Tech.
Our fans, again, can't thank them enough. It was an incredible environment Thursday night in Lane Stadium. I don't want to take that for granted in our program. We're very fortunate. I also want to thank everyone that's involved in putting that game on. So many people in the setup, in the breakdown, in the management and operation of it. A lot goes into that being successful. It's not just our football team, coaches. So thanks to everybody. Special thanks to Bruce Smith, Mike Vick being on the sideline. Not many programs can tout having 2 number 1 picks on the sideline of their football game, which is awesome for us. Appreciate their support. We'll need it again this weekend. Homecoming, quality opponent, in conference, Maroon Effect, sellout, breast cancer awareness, so much going on again in Lane Stadium. An awesome opportunity for our football program against a very good football team. So Coach Key, I've known him for a while, tremendous respect. Much like myself, he's invested in Georgia Tech for a lot of reasons, personal reasons. And he's done a nice job, did a good job last year. He's been super competitive this year, each game. And I know we'll have a good.
All right, so there you have it. The Hokies now turn their attention to Georgia Tech. They're 2-touchdown favorites in that matchup. It'll be interesting to see if the Hokies can kind of build on that momentum. Turning our attention now to UVA. They won on the road last week in an emotional game for Tony Elliott. Of course, he used to be the offensive coordinator at Clemson, played wide receiver at Clemson. They made a big deal about that on the broadcast. And I thought they did a good job, kind of giving him his flowers and welcoming him back. It was his first time going back. But the Cavs started really slow. Or they started fast and then had a really slow start to the second half, and it kind of doomed them. They fall to Clemson 48-31. Calandria went for 2 touchdowns. Tony Muskett came in the fourth quarter and looked great and led 2 scoring drives, like 60 yards and 50 yards. Finished the game with 2 touchdown passes. And looked good. And now you kind of raise some questions as to who's going to be the quarterback now. But it really wasn't that horrible of a game from Virginia Tech. That middle eight that Tony Elliott likes to talk about so much is kind of where they struggled in this game. Kobe Pace struggled running the ball. Everybody for UVA did. They finished with just 68 yards rushing. Some of that stat probably has to do with the fact that they were behind for a lot of this game, so they had to throw the ball. But if you can't run the rock, then you're not going to be able to have a lot of success, and that's exactly what we saw on Saturday. In terms of this weekend, it's the South's oldest rivalry as North Carolina comes to town. This will be the 130th meeting between UNC and UVA. Crazy to think that they've been playing football for 130 years on the campus over there in Charlottesville. UNC leads the all-time series 66-59-4. Pretty close matchup. If you look at the Winspedia page and who's been winning, it's like each team takes 5 years of winning and not winning. And last year, of course, it was UVA that took down Mac Brown's team. A Mac Brown team that is desperate for a win. They've really struggled this season. They sit at 0-3 in conference play. They're 3-4 on the year. They've lost 4 straight. Things are not looking good in Chapel Hill, and they have to go on the road now to Scott Stadium. All right, but I do have footage from UVA's matchup against Clemson. Let's take a look at that. On the road. See, I think I started. There we go. Cade Klubnik is really starting to kind of find himself as a quarterback, for Clemson. Big interception early, which led to a touchdown for UVA. But I think what's interesting in this matchup is you think back to a couple of years ago with Clemson and the conversation around Dabo Swinney, the transfer portal. What are they going to do? This is not going to be a winning formula. And it's almost like people wrote off Clemson, especially after they lost to Georgia week 1. But Cade Klubnik has turned into a really good quarterback. I think he's way undervalued. No one really talks about him as a NFL-type quarterback, but he plays great. I mean, he threw for over 300 yards, said to himself that it wasn't a great game that he had. And I think that the Clemson Tigers deserve a little more respect than they're getting in the national conversation. They're 10th in the country. They're 6-1. They've won their last 6 games, and they are rolling. UVA in this game, as I mentioned, that slow third quarter was the difference. The Tigers I think they put up 21 points in the third quarter alone and took it to the Cavaliers. They went at 48-31. Yeah, 21 points in the third quarter, the big difference in this one. And then a backdoor cover by UVA is the difference in this one. Tony Muskett comes in, gets the 2 touchdowns with under 5 minutes to play, and it kind of makes the score look a little closer than the game actually was. But this weekend, it'll be interesting to see if who's going to bounce back. Is it going to be the Tar Heels that finally find some momentum and get some success under Mac Brown, who's kind of already alluded to the fact that he's kind of ready to retire? Or will it be Tony Elliott's team that's still playing for a bowl game, still maybe in the conversation for an ACC championship if the entire conference implodes like it normally does? So their season's not over yet either. We got 5 games left, folks. There's a lot of football left to be played this football season. And that takes us to the Richmond Spiders, who were back at home. And, man, I'm excited to talk about the Spiders because they took down an undefeated Delaware team 28-9. Camden Coleman played incredible, threw for 2 scores, rushed for a score, really rushed for 2 touchdowns. I'll show you that highlight in a second. And the Spiders have now won 5 straight. They've set at 5-2, and they'll hit the road to take on a Bryant team that hasn't won a CAA game yet, and they should be big favorites in that matchup. Let's check out the highlights from Richmond because they played great. no one expected Richmond to win this game. Delaware was undefeated. They're making the transition into FBS football. So they're technically not allowed to be ranked. They probably would have been a top 10 team if they could be ranked. They're going to be in the Conference USA next year. So this year they have more scholarships than Richmond does, for example. So they're not eligible for the FCS playoffs. They're not eligible for a bowl game. They're really out there just playing to be playing. It's kind of a strange situation that Division I football does. But that was a big catch from Nick DeGennaro. And here's the play I wanted to show you. Camden Coleman, the kid's not known for his speed, but look at him move on this play down the sideline, and they screw him out of a touchdown. I hate to say it that way, but, I mean, my man got into the end zone. They called him out at the 1. Next play, Zachary Palmer-Smith did get into the end zone to cap off the drive. The score at halftime was 28-9. The final score was 28-9. It was a great performance by the defense. How about my man Matt Robart right in my face, screaming at me? Second time he's done that this year. They were pumped up over on the campus of University of Richmond at Robins Stadium. The defense was flying around, knocking helmets off. I mean, the Spiders are playing good football. And if you would have told me week 2 that this was going to be a team that was going to win 5 straight, I think I would have disagreed with you. You know, they struggled at UVA. They lost to a Wofford team that now looks like a really bad loss. But the Spiders, they remain ranked 18th in the nation following the win at Delaware, and they are 5-2 and will probably make a playoff push at the end of this season, man. I mean, they looked really good. It'll be interesting to see just how well they play against Bryant, and then in a couple of weeks here against their big rivals in William and Mary, because that will probably decide the conference champion. All right, turning our attention to the NFL. The Commanders, man, they took care of business without Jaden Daniels. Marcus Mariota, 18 for 23 yards, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns. Daniels left this game with a rib injury on a long rush play. And the big talk today is about, will he play this Saturday, because the Commanders play, of course, Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears, and there's a lot of intrigue around all these rookie quarterbacks and the success that they're all having. But I think what they're going to do is call it day by day, and they'll say that he has a chance to play, but then, you know, at the end of the week, they'll say, you know, he's not out. And I think that's what they should do. I understand there's a lot of media hype around this thing, but you saw what happened with Robert Griffin. He came back from injury too early and then was never the same once he got injured again. I think everyone in the Commanders building remembers that. I think every Commanders fan at home remembers that. And I think everyone's fine. If Jaden wants to take 2 weeks off, let's give him 2 weeks off. There's no reason to have him come in here, get hurt, especially a rib injury. I mean, that's a dangerous injury if you come back too early. And I think they'll call him day to day, and I'll be surprised if he plays on Sunday. They haven't ruled him out yet, but I think it would be wise to make sure that guy gets completely healed up, because with the way the rest of the schedule looks, with the way the rest of the division looks, losing one game because of an injured quarterback is going to be okay with the way things are rolling right now for the Commanders, because the fact that they can beat another NFL team 40-7 with a backup quarterback tells you how much talent is on that roster, from the defensive side of the football to the offensive line. Brian Robinson's been great. I mean, it's impressive what the Commanders are doing. I think it's taken everybody by storm. I know, Will, you kind of grew up watching the Commanders a little bit. Let's bring you in here. What are your thoughts on Jaden Daniels with it's a rib injury? They're calling him week to week. Dan Quinn hasn't ruled him out. I think some people want him to play. What do you think should happen?
I think it's a long season, and yeah, you're very right about RG3. I think I definitely think that nobody in the Commanders community wants to see a repeat of that. And like you said, they definitely remember what went wrong with it about 10 years ago, and hopefully there aren't that many people in the Commanders building as that were still there from 2013.
That's a good point.
But yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think that there's any reason to rush him back. And even against the Bears, I don't know if it's really necessary. Of course, I think everybody's waiting for Williams versus Daniels, but I think
I think that almost, if it was Carolina this week, I don't even think there's a question he's not playing. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like I think everyone just wanted to see it, wanted to see this game, these two rookies face off, and it's been impressive, how much success the two have had. But it really felt like deja vu when he went out to the locker room, and then you're like, oh man, he had such great success. He looked incredible. And I'm sure for Commanders fans out there, it was nerve wracking to say the least to see to finally be able to root for your team and be excited about something than him get hurt. But luckily, everything else is sitting pretty for Jaden Daniels and company. But anyway, you got some other top storylines for us, right, Will?
Yes, sir. I think the biggest Virginia sports story of this past week has been Tony Bennett announcing his unexpected departure from UVA basketball. And, I think everybody's thinking what is going to happen sort of for UVA this season. Everybody's looking at Ron Sanchez, who's been named the acting head coach for the season. And, I think everything that I have learned about Sanchez over the last week has been very promising. He was the head coach for the Charlotte 49ers for 5 years, and every year he led them to improve over the year before for pretty much every year that he was their head coach. I think that he is a good guy to lead the team in Bennett's stead. And, what choice do they have? You know what I mean?
The news, just shocked everybody. It was shock factor 1,000. We're 20 days before the season starts, and Tony Bennett decides that he wants to walk away. And I went to the press conference on Friday, and the mood was kind of weird, right? Let's be frank about it, because you want to celebrate a guy that's done so much for your university. This guy put Virginia basketball back on the map. Took them to levels that even Ralph Sampson couldn't take them to. Won a national championship in 2019. Won 6 ACC championships. Made Virginia considered a blue blood there for about 10 years. The guy has been incredible for the university. But on the flip side of the coin here, it's 20 days before the season. It's shocking. And to think about the fact that he brought transfers in, convinced guys not to transfer, went to media day, talked about how he has a 2-year plan, that we got to start thinking of this thing in 2 years with the transfer portal because guys are going to be leaving now. So if we can start thinking of things in 2 years instead of 4 years, then we should, he had all these ideas and how he was going to handle things. And then a week later, he says that he went on vacation to the Rappahannock River and stayed at a hotel there and realized that his heart just wasn't in it, and that it was time for him to step away, and that he just couldn't do it anymore. And you feel for the guy, because I'm sure it is incredibly stressful, time-consuming job and whatnot. And I don't think anyone blames him for stepping away. I think the question here is to leave 20 days before the season starts. It's crazy, Will.
It's definitely weird timing, but I definitely understand that he, doesn't want to coach half-heartedly, and I think that is a very selfless decision. Obviously, people are sort of wondering why he decided to do this now, but it's probably better than to do it, 3/4 of the way through the season.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And what he said during his press conference, and he said he wanted to hand the program off to one of his assistants. That was always his idea. So I'm thinking that if he leaves before the season, Sanchez gets an entire year with the team, and then they decide whether or not to keep him or to hire somebody. Whereas, if he waits till the end of the season, maybe Sanchez doesn't get that chance, and they end up hiring somebody else. And so he kind of forced the university's hand on this one to give Sanchez his shot. And the Cavs were supposed to be pretty good this year. They're picked 5th in the conference. Normally, the 5th place team of the ACC is definitely going to go to the NCAA tournament. So they have the talent on this roster. It'll be interesting to see what exactly it looks like. Today, I saw a quote from Sanchez saying that this is still Virginia basketball. These players are here because of Virginia basketball. Just because Tony Bennett's not here doesn't mean that Virginia basketball is not Virginia basketball. So it sounds like he's going to keep things exactly how it would have been with Tony, except Sanchez at the helm now, and we'll see just how good he does. And like I said, he's got a talented roster to be able to do it as well. And speaking of basketball, NBA tips off tonight. The Lakers, I think everyone's excited to see that matchup. LeBron James and LeBron James Jr. sharing a court, father and son, first time in NBA history. What are your thoughts on it, Will?
Well, I am definitely – I think I was concerned about people sort of looking for things to be critical of the young Bronny for, and I think just because he is the son of LeBron James, I don't know if that necessarily means that he deserves that level of scrutiny, but in his last preseason game, I think he showed the haters what he's about.
And 17 points in that
17 points, I think that's pretty good. And 1 for 5 from 3 is certainly not ideal, but I think he finally got some significant minutes, and I think he showed that he is capable of being productive on both sides. 3 steals and a block.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's
I'm curious to see exactly how his role progresses, right? Because, the way that he's been used in preseason games and, he's kind of been a playmaker, and he is a talented shooter. And so I'm curious if his role as the season goes on, if he continues to, try to be LeBron James, or if he kind of goes into a different box where he's, runs to the corner every play, and that's his role. Run to the corner, shoot the 3, make the 3. Get on defense, play good defense, because he's a good defender and he can shoot the basketball. And so I'm curious to see if his role transitions, how quickly they move him to the G League, if they move him to the G League. That's interesting too. But I'm excited. It will be a cool moment. We had the preseason moment with LeBron and Bronny out on the floor, but tonight I am looking forward to seeing father and son play NBA basketball and to be at the level of the father, being LeBron James, it being one of the greatest of all time, it being his son. I mean, it is a cool story, and I'm excited to see it play out. It'll be interesting to see just how it plays out, because the Lakers aren't expected to have a great season. They're not even in the top 10 in odds for NBA championship. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. I think Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Jr. Sr. played before I was born, and so I only had the opportunity to see that sort of on YouTube.
Yeah, that one was different too, though, because Jr. was really good, and so you brought up a good point with the unfair level of scrutiny that I think Bronny's getting, and if that tide, I think, will eventually change to people kind of pulling for him, hoping that he does well. But right now, that definitely doesn't seem like the sentiment. All right, well, that's going to wrap up another edition here of 8Sports Night Talk. Thanks so much for Will Gonzalez for joining us, helping produce and put this show together. And, of course, thanks to everyone for tuning in to another edition of 8Sports Nightcap. We'll be back here next week for the same time, Tuesday, 6:45. We'll recap some big games. Of course, Virginia Tech takes on Georgia Tech. UVA will take on UNC in the South's oldest rivalry. Richmond hits the road for Bryant, and the Commanders take on the Chicago Bears. Should be a fun week of sports. Things are getting busy. Basketball season's right around the corner. Tomorrow I have VCU Media Day, so be sure to tune in to the news tomorrow as we get to talk with the VCU players for the first time in person before their season begins here in a couple of weeks. Crazy how fast the year's going. Holiday season nearly here. Things are going to be rolling. But anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.